I turned my own husband in to federal agents, and then they came for me. 9 years of marriage, one hidden key, and the realization that my life was a complete lie. I turned my own husband in to federal agents, and then they came for me. I did everything right. I found the evidence. I reported it myself. I handed them everything. And I still ended up under criminal investigation for crimes I never knew I was committing. This is not a story about a cheating husband. This is so much worse than that. His name was Marcus. Easy smile. The kind of man who makes your mother trust him before he finishes shaking her hand. We met at a charity auction. He won the bid on a beat-up vintage guitar, paid way too much, grinned like he knew exactly what he was doing. I thought it was the most charming thing. I should have clocked it right then. That man was always performing. We built a life, a house, a dog named Biscuit. 9 years together. And then, about a year before everything collapsed, we adopted a little boy. 5 years old, Danny. Huge dark eyes, gap-toothed smile that completely wrecked me. I thought I had everything. I was also, it turns out, the most useful idiot in the entire operation. I was an accountant. Nothing flashy, steady paycheck. Marcus called himself a private portfolio consultant. Lots of calls, lots of travel. I never pushed on the details because he always came home, and he always had a story, and the stories were always good. The red flags were there, though. Phone always face down. Business trips booked one way. And the thing that nagged at me most, sometimes when Danny laughed, Marcus would go completely still, like he was watching something he'd already seen, like he was remembering it. I told myself I was overthinking. I was not overthinking. Marcus was out of town, Chicago, he said, when I cleaned out the storage room. Boxes of old files, a broken lamp, holiday decorations, normal stuff. And then, pushed to the back wall, his guitar case, the one from the auction. He always said it was decorative, just a keepsake, never to be opened because of the wood and the humidity. I'd respected that for 9 years, never once touched it. I picked it up to move it. Something slid around inside. No guitar. Just a fireproof envelope, a rubber-banded folder of documents, and a small brass key tagged Box 7. First National Trust. Marcus banked at the same credit union I did. I'd seen our joint statements my whole adult life. Or I thought I had. I put everything back exactly as I found it. Latched the case. Pushed it to the wall. Then I sat on the kitchen floor with Biscuit in my lap and made a decision. I wasn't saying a word to Marcus. Not yet. First, I was going to find out what was in that box. I took a personal day and drove to First National Trust. Here's the thing. My name was already listed as secondary holder on Box 7. I had never signed anything authorizing that. Someone had added me without my knowledge. But it meant my ID matched what was on file. And the woman at the desk walked me straight back to the vault, no questions. Box 7. 4 thick envelopes of cash. A property deed for a house in a state I'd never visited, and a marriage certificate. I read it 3 times. Marcus James Whitfield, married to a woman named Renee Ann Holloway. 11 years ago, Marcus and I had been together for 9. I sat in the little private booth in the vault and went completely still. Not crying, not shaking, just still. Like my body stopped before my brain did, because this wasn't an affair. This wasn't texting some woman behind my back. Marcus had a whole other wife, a whole other life running at the exact same time as mine, for 9 straight years. And then I found the photograph, tucked inside the deed, printed on plain paper, like it was nothing. Marcus smiling, a dark-haired woman next to him, and between them, holding both their hands, a little boy with huge dark eyes and a gap-toothed grin. Danny. I had to look at that picture more than once, because Danny wasn't an orphan. He wasn't a child without a family. He was Marcus's biological son with his other wife, and Marcus had taken his own kid and placed him in our home, and I had spent a year reading that little boy bedtime stories, thinking I was his mother. I photographed everything, put it all back, drove home, fed Biscuit. When Marcus came home 2 days later with a bottle of wine and some story about a delayed flight, I kissed him on the cheek. I still don't know how I did that. I didn't go to Marcus. I went to a private investigator named Gloria. Cash only, paid out in small amounts over several days. No digital trail back to me. 11 days later, she called and said, "Come in. Don't bring your phone." I sat across from her in a windowless office while she walked me through what she'd found. And I want to tell you there was one specific moment where I genuinely could not breathe. Here's what Marcus had been doing. Years before we met, a relative died and left behind serious money, dirty money tied up in an old fraud case. Moving it through any account in his own name would have triggered every financial watchdog in the country. He needed a clean pipeline, someone with a spotless record, steady income, an established bank account, and no reason to ask questions. He needed a wife. Every document I'd signed over 9 years, refinancing forms, account amendments, investment paperwork, he'd slide across the table with, "Just boring stuff, babe." Every single one had been used to route that money through our accounts and out the other side into properties and funds that existed entirely off the books. I was the pipeline. I just didn't know it.
This is a case of instrumental exploitation. The aggressor views the partner solely as a utility for personal gain, bypassing emotional bonds for strategic efficiency.
And then Gloria told me about Danny, and that's when the anger hit me. The quiet kind, the kind where everything gets very clear. Renee, the other wife, knew things that could have buried Marcus. So he engineered the adoption, moved Danny out of that household and into mine, created distance between Renee and everything she could use against him, put a wall between her and the evidence. My son. The little boy I'd taught to tie his shoes, who called for me when he had nightmares, who fell asleep with his head on my leg, placed in my home as a chess piece. I called a criminal defense attorney that same afternoon, because I already knew how this looked. My name was on every document. My accounts had moved every dollar. The second this unraveled, I was holding the bag. I needed to be first through that door, not waiting behind it when it got kicked in. My attorney said one thing at our first meeting that I wrote on a napkin and kept. The person who walks in first walks out best. I walked in like I had nothing left to lose, because I didn't. We handed over the vault photographs, Gloria's full report, and 3 years of my own financial records that I had gone through line by line. Every transaction flagged with a note about what document Marcus gave me, when, and what he told me it was for. My attorney looked at that stack and said, "This is really good." Then we set the trap. With my attorney next to me and a federal agent already briefed, I called Marcus. Normal voice. I told him I'd found that old guitar in storage and wanted to get it looked at. Could he meet me at this address? He said, "Of course, anything for you." He walked into that shop expecting to talk about a guitar. What he walked into was 2 federal agents, my attorney, and a rep from the district attorney's office. I watched his face go from easy smile to total blankness, to something I don't have a word for. He looked straight at me. He said, "Just let me explain." My attorney touched my arm. We walked out. 48 hours later, Marcus was arrested. Renee cut a deal and testified against him. Property liens hit every account. The house in the other state was seized, every shell fund frozen and dismantled. 9 years of lies, 2 weeks to collapse. 3 days after the arrest, I got a call through the jail system, recorded, announced. Marcus was crying. He said things were complicated, And then he said, "You were the only real thing, you know that? Out of all of it, you were the only part that was real."
This illustrates pathological compartmentalization. The manipulator seeks to validate their distorted reality by projecting sincerity onto their victim, despite their history of systemic deception.
I thought. So I was a prop who turned out to be a person. That's almost funny. I let him finish. Then I ended the call. Now here's the part nobody sees coming. My accounts were frozen. I was under investigation. I sat through weeks of depositions, same questions over and over, strangers going through every financial decision I'd made for 9 years. My attorney fought every single day. Those annotated records became the foundation of my defense. The timeline proved I hadn't known, and the second I found out, I came forward completely. The charges against me were dropped. Everyone. The Danny situation is still unfolding, and that's not my story to tell in full. What I can tell you is, I fought hard to make sure the people deciding his future understood who he actually was, not just what Marcus had used him for. He's safe. That's what matters. I rent a small place now. Biscuit sleeps at the foot of the bed. I went back to work, and they took me back. No questions asked, because my actual record was clean. Some mornings, I wake up still angry. Then Biscuit puts his head in my lap. I make my coffee, and I think about Marcus walking into that shop with that easy grin, right up until the second it wasn't. He spent 9 years building everything on my name, my accounts, my signature, my trust. The one thing he never planned for was me being smarter about it than he was. Last I heard, he's got a public defender and a storage unit. I've got Biscuit. I think I came out ahead.
Have you ever discovered a secret that completely shattered your entire reality? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of truth and survival.